Okay, so we're gonna try to get this to work. But basically, the first thing you'll do, since we need the square template for any new tumbler, is you're gonna want to open one of the easier, basic ones like SWBBK square is fine. One of the newer ones, let's find like the hats template is newer. It doesn't matter really, but it needs to be a newer template that's square. And you're just going to select everything. Oh, actually, hang on. Let's save it as, I don't know the cup name. I don't think you mentioned it. So for now, I'm just going to save it into downloads as new template. And I'll change the name later. But you would normally use whatever the item code is, and you would put it in the template folder. But leave it as a Photoshop document and name it whatever template. And for now, I'm just, like I said, I'm calling it new template so I don't erase the hat one. But you're going to go ahead and select everything but the background bottom layer, delete it. So now we have a square template. And just so you know, the size on this is really huge. In fact, hang on a second, that's too big. um, Let me see. Normally it should be about 1,000 by 1,000, and the resolutions. A lot of time we used to do just 72 because that's what screen resolution is. Since these are for print though, it probably should be higher. Let me actually close this one. Um, let's pull a different one. Let me see what the other, either SWBBK or K12. That's the koozie. Let me see what the size of this is. Yeah, see, this one's more like the size we generally use. I kind of, because we've printed stuff, like something, this one's fine because it's a smaller object, but a larger cup may need a little bit bigger than this. Resolution, probably should be higher, honestly, if these are going to be printed, like in brochures and stuff. Let me think. We don't really have a standard, that's an issue. So some of the older stuff like this is smaller. Let's say uh, 300 resolution because that's generally for print, but we'll leave it at 1200 pixels. Uh, let's see how big that is. Oh wait, I just changed the original. That's not. I'm gonna have to save as the new template. I'll leave it alone for now, but uh, save as. I had that new template over here. There we go. So I'm saving over the new template I made a second ago with the hat template. And now that we have a new file and we're not going to delete the old one, I can go ahead and clear all this out. I'm gonna, whoops, I'm gonna make a background that's white. Hang on a second. There we go. Oh, why can't I delete those? That's weird. I guess I'll just delete them one at a time. It must be a safety thing. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna leave these logo links because I can put those over the cup. It'll save me the hassle of getting new logos. So they're gonna be there. I may turn them off so I can work, but then I'm gonna add a new layer and make it white. Uh, just for while I'm working. Yeah, I think we will want it to be transparent later. So this is just a temporary layer because you want it to have this transparency and you just want the cup in the middle. Uh, but having a layer to turn on and off is good for a template because like with the other templates, you sometimes want to save it with a white background and sometimes you just want it translucent. That's mostly for when you drag these Photoshop templates into InDesign. So you do want to have both the white layer and no white layer. You just want to be able to turn it on and off. So you want that at the bottom like that. then you'll have the cup, and then you'll have the logos over the cup. So the main step now is to get the cup file or tumbler, which I downloaded, onto here so we can trace it out of this background. That's pretty big. I'm gonna shrink it a little so that when I trim it, I can, like, basically it'll fit. It's the end result is it needs to be about, you'll want like a centimeter or maybe half an inch above and below it. You just don't want it to be right up to the edge, basically. That might be too far, but I'll just get it close and we can look at it after we trace it. So basically about this size. It doesn't have to be centered right now because we're about to trace it out. We'll center it, after that. So now you've got your logos and stuff, and you've got this that we're going to have to trace out. We're also going to have to erase this logo. And the way you do that, we'll be using the rubber stamp tool. Let me rest. Okay, I'll do it all step by step because I keep forgetting, like, some of this, I might go too fast. So basically, for whatever reason, the file I dragged in, let's see what kind of file it is. It's a JPEG. But for some reason, I guess Photoshop does this now. It didn't render it as raster art. It's a smart object. And you can't, there's certain things you can't do to a smart object. So I may go ahead, if you rasterize it, it basically just makes it, permanently like pixels. Smart object can be, basically you can undo more things if you leave it as a smart object. I don't know, it may let me trace it. I'll leave it as a smart object and see. But I think, well, no, okay, that was my point. I can't use the rubber stamp tool if it's not rasterized. So actually, you right click on the layer and we do have to rasterize it. I just realized, because that's the only way I can use the rubber stamp. And we're not going to do this right now, but just so you know how you would get rid of this logo is you use the rubber stamp tool, you hold Alt, and you see how the cursor changed. Wherever you click while you're holding the Alt key, it's going to pull from that area. So I'm going to click right here where this highlighted part of the cup is going up and down. And I'm going to actually shrink the tool. And then if you spray, like, click it, well, now you can see it's pasting over that. You would have to pull from here, move up, cover it. Let me go 100%. Then you would cover. It's basically copying where that cursor was clicked, and then you're copying it up above it a little bit. That's all. That's the rubber stamp tool, basically. But the goal is to slowly, you have to keep going down and pulling, then going up and covering. And then you do it again, because if I pull and just keep going, it starts copying the logo. You can see how it's going over it and copying it. So it's a very slow process, but we're going to do that after we trim the cup. But just so you know, that's how you hide logos and make it look like the cup is still, plain, fresh, unlabeled, or unprinted on. But anyways, so starting out, we just need to use this pen tool to trace around the cup, and that's going to allow us to mask the edge. Now, some people just erase around it or mask it by hand, but it looks shoddier if you do that. If you use the pen tool, you'll get a very precise outline, and it'll look more professional. Like, you can go down to the pixels, like you can almost see each individual pixel, and you just try to stay in the very middle where they blur together, where the edge meets the color. And wherever you click, you just drag slightly. As I drag, you can see how these two handles come off the ends. So you just drag enough to see the handles and you let go. Then you press the Alt key and hold it, and you'll see the cursor change to this other type of arrow when you hover. So I'm holding the Alt key, but I'm not clicking anything else, just the Alt key. Now, when it changes to this little arrow, you then click that handle, and if you drag it, you can control just that handle. So your goal is to get this line to match the curve of the cup, basically. Let me undo because it's not where I want it. On the biggest, curviest part, you might start small, like this, and just get this part right. You kind of want it in the middle of where the color meets the edge. We can also fix it later, so it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why using the pen tool is good, because you can edit. Like I can click, if you hold control, you can click the anchors and move those around too. Then you hold alt and you can control just the handles. So control is for the anchor points and alt is for the handles. So you want the next handle to point the direction you're about to go. So this one needs to line up with that edge. And once you get it kind of lined up how you need, you can go way far and cover a large distance. That saves time also, because now I don't have to individually draw a bunch of points. I can just drag this and position each handle to follow that edge. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're on such a small scale. When you zoom out, it's not going to look as sloppy as it might look here. The goal is to capture the dark edge of the cup against the background color. Now there's some kind of lip right here on the cup, so I have to kind of start going upward right about here. So I'm going to drag this a little bit. And like I said, because these points are able to be edited later, you don't have to get it perfect on the first try. You just kind of do it, then you'll zoom out and take a look at it. And if it looks good, you're good. But if you need to fix anything, you can just zoom back in and change one or two anchor points or handles, and it'll be how you need. You'll get it looking how you want. So that's the benefit to this tool. If you're just erasing around the object, that's like permanent damage that you can't undo. Now, if you mask around the object, you can still edit the mask, but this actually will be converted to a mask later. So this is a more precise way to draw around the cup, plus it can be turned into a mask. This pen tool is basically drawing a path, and that path is going to become a mask later. So this isn't perfectly straight, but in real life, like from a picture angle, everything that's normally like perfectly straight on the cup won't appear perfectly straight. So it's actually okay if it's not. It might actually even look unnatural to the human eye if everything on this was too perfect. So you just want to follow kind of how the picture looks. But when you're on bigger curves like this, these are the easier part because you can cover a huge space in one go. So it's only the detailed areas that take more effort or time. Like, see, I just covered this whole edge in a couple of seconds. So that's why the pen tool's the best way, really. Uh, I kind of need to tweak this anchor a little bit. It's a little off. That's pretty close. Okay, so then we're going to follow this edge down here. Let me see if I can get the curve right. Since you can move everything around, you can definitely play with it until you get exactly what you need. Just remember, Control key lets you drag the anchor points. Alt key lets you drag the handles. So I'm switching as I click each one, I'm changing which key I'm hitting. That way I can drag the anchor or the handle. And each anchor point will have two handles, one for one side of it and the other for the other side, depending on, it's kind of like the direction the line's going. So like here, the line's about to drop downward, so I'm going to move the handle downward. That tells it that's the direction the line needs to go, basically, when I click the next anchor. So right here there's a little indentation. I'm gonna try to capture that. So we're gonna make the line go here. Whoops. You do have to drag it a little to get those handles to appear. So that's why I redid that one so I could get the handle to appear. And it's gonna go into this little dip. Let me zoom in. Oh, when you zoom into a certain level, you see the pixel grid. That I think that makes it a little harder to see what you're doing, so I'm gonna stay at this level. So you click this. It looks kind of messy, but I think that's it. Once we're done, you can click out of the path and see how it actually looks. That's pretty close. So it's gonna go this way. Let me see how that looks when I click the next level. Yeah, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect because all this is so small when you zoom out. But you do want to capture the details of the edge of the cup so that it does need to look realistic. If you were to just go straight down, that's a little lazy and it'll show in the final product. It'll just look like you cut it out of a magazine or something instead of it being actually the product. It's like that little bit of extra effort helps. There's sort of an indentation here, but I think this one is so small, it's only like 1 pixel. So in this case, I would ignore that. Like this one's a couple pixels in, so it's worth showing it. This, I wouldn't. It's too small. Like it's not even going to show up. So at this point, I can go straight down the edge. It's a little hard to see the edge because of the gray background. It looks like it goes straight until about here. So I'm going to click the next point there. Oh, actually it's not straight because if you hold shift it goes straight down. You can see it. There's some of the cup outside of there. So let me zoom out. You know what? That's not the cup. That's like artifacts in the image. So I'll click right about there. Yeah, it's a little weird. There's some distorted like artifacts off to the side of the cup, so I can't tell where the true edge is, but that looks about accurate. The cup looks like it gets wider from the top to the bottom. It kind of stretches out, so that's why it doesn't go straight down, I think. But from that point, we need to follow this edge right about to there. I forgot to add handles here. I think if I whoops, hold Alt, let's try that. Yeah, hold Alt and click an anchor, yes, an anchor point. That makes the handles appear. You hold Alt and drag. You'll have to it will move the handles around, so I have to fix that real quick. I can see it came off center. So let me do that. That's pretty close. Okay. So now I need to fix this one. You can see the edge is right about there. And I just have to, these weird ridges are gonna, like each one will have to do a curve for, so. I think what I'll do is pause the video because you've seen enough to know like how to do that, and then I'll finish tracing and come back for the next step. So I'm gonna pause it real quick, and when I come back it'll be done basically, the tracing. So once you have both lines done, the outer and this inner one, you can see there will be one for the handle on the inside. What you also can see like it's selecting only the inner one. You're going to have to make sure both are selected. So let me click off of them. Uh, and under Window and Paths, you'll click that and it brings this small path menu up. You'll have both paths that you just drew here. It should be one. If they're separated, you may have to try to combine them or select them both simultaneously, but they should be one. So you double click or click off and then back on. So now both are selected, and you're going to click this dotted circle, which turns that path into a selection. So now you can see it's selected. And then you're going to hit Control, Alt, and the letter R, all three at the same time. And that brings up a mask tool. And so what that does is lets you control how it's going to be masked later. It doesn't actually do the mask yet, but it's showing you a preview of it. So if I turn transparency all the way down to 0, you can see that gray box is still there. But what we're doing is using the path as a selection to mask everything around the cup, everything that we traced around basically. You can also click invert and it'll do the opposite. It'll mask the cup and leave the border, the stuff around it. But you don't, obviously you don't want to do that. So on radius, I would do either 0 or 1. Let me see what 1 looks like. 1 fixed the edge a little, but almost too much. So I'm going to do smoothing about 4. Leave feather alone. Contrast, do it up a little, like maybe 10 or 15. That just makes the edge sharper. I might even go up to 20. And then on shift edge, try adding plus 20 and then try negative 20. Okay, I don't know if you saw, but the edge just went in a bunch. I think you can either leave it at 0, which is no change, or in this case, I'm going to add about 20 or 30 because it needs a little bit of a dark edge. See how it just looks sharper. So then that's everything we want to do. So go ahead and click OK. And so you can see it didn't actually mask it. It's just telling it when you click mask, that's the settings it's going to apply. So now that we did those settings, you need to click this button while everything's still selected. And now it masked it using those settings we just set. So now you have this layer independent and masked, but we can also undo the mask later. That's the whole point of a mask, is it's not permanently erasing anything, so it can be tweaked or edited later on this template, which is what we want, just in case we had to. Now I don't know why over here there's a little bit of weirdness going on right here, so I might try to mask that manually, which I can just do a straight lasso tool through just part of it, not all of it. So let's see if I can make sure mask is selected if you're going to do any masking. Then you hit B for brush to bring up the paintbrush and make sure it's the color black, because when you're masking, the color black means erase. So you can see a little bit of that blur just got erased. So now if I deselect using Control D, it's still got a little, I think when I was doing the line work, I thought there were indentations there, so I actually drew indentations. If we really wanted to fix that, I would go back and redo the path, but just to fix it currently, I'm going to just touch it up using a straight line type of selection. This time I'm actually going to select on the inside, and I'm going to use the rubber stamp tool to basically copy the texture and color on this side and paste it to fill in the very edge. So if you hit Alt key, that lets you select some of that. Oh, actually it didn't work because I'm on mask. Let me try again. There we go. And I'm just going to draw basically filling in these parts that are not quite there. It's actually darkening it a little too much, but let me use lighter color. It's still too dark. Yeah, I mean, it's doesn't have to be perfect, but I don't like that darkness. Let's see what it looks like without. It's all right, but I still see that. Oh, it's because of the way it's meshed. I would actually would have to fix that. Let me undo some of the. Yeah, so I'm either gonna have to change the work. Actually, no, look, the work path covers it. So it's just how the image was then. The best solution here would be to make a new layer. Deselect or get rid of the work path. Um, Trace a straight line again. It's really only this little area, so I'm going to do this and zoom in somewhat. I kind of need to see all of it though. Yeah, there's even some up there. I'll have to do two halves. Like I'll do the top and then scroll down. Okay, so we have a blank layer. We're selecting only this area. And I'm going to use rubber stamp tool again. But I'm going to shrink this a lot and make it maybe like 80. I guess I'll leave it at 80% opacity. The flow will be lower. And let's see if we can pull from here. Uh, it's still not doing it. Hang on. You need to set it to sample all layers or current and below because we're in the layer above this. That's perfect. So we can pull from below. There we go. That's all I needed. But it's still going to have a little darkness, so I can try to touch that up afterwards. The goal is to just get a straight line on these parts where it is not flush looking. Pretty close. It's not going to be perfect. Alright. Yeah, from a distance it looks better. It's a little dark on that edge, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. There's a little spot there. I could blur that if I wanted to hide it a bit. Blur or smudge. I'm going to try just blurring. Yeah, it's a little better. And if I go up along the edge, I can blur. You don't want to blur things too much or it looks kind of weird. But anywhere where it's a little darker, I'm just kind of blurring. I think it's smoothing it too much, but let's zoom out. No, it's not that bad. So what we have now, I'm going to actually hit Control E and that merges. Oh, it's going to force me to make the mask permanent. That's okay because it's good enough to do that. So now we just, not only did we merge the stuff I copied right here or painted here, we merged it down into the layer with the tumbler, but we also turned the mask into a permanent situation. So the mask is gone now, and we just have this tumbler by itself. Because I don't think we're ever going to actually need the background for this, and the edge looks pretty good up here. So we got what we wanted. The two things we need to do now is color correct the metal and also the black part. But before that, we also need to get rid of this logo. And we're going to use that same rubber stamp tool for that. So I'm going to zoom in, make sure we're on this layer, and select the rubber stamp tool. And you can use the bracket keys that are below the negative or the minus and plus signs on the keyboard, like where the number keys are, and then you have minus sign, plus sign, and then backspace. Right below that is two bracket keys, and those allow you to make the brush size go up or down without having to select it up here. You can do size up here, but it's a million times faster to just hit these keys. See how fast I'm changing the size. So we want it to be a little smaller than the parts you're going to be tracing over, because you can't pull from where there's already logo. You can only cover from these darker or parts that don't have anything on them. So I'm going to pull from way down here. You hold Alt key and you'll see the cursor change to a little crosshair. You click there and then you go up, and it's going to copy from down here, and you'll actually see an icon pop up showing you where you're copying from. So I'm just going to swing back and forth. Oh, actually I'm going to undo that. You want to start in the middle of a colored area, like this dark shadow in the middle, and you also want to start in the middle. I accidentally was off center, but that way it copies exactly from the sides. Oh, you want to make sure opacity is 100%. You can turn this on and turn flow down a little bit so that it's not spraying so strong, but you want opacity 100. Otherwise you'll have these ghosted looking parts of the logo still there. So let me pull from here again and start swinging back and forth, and it'll start covering it up, but you can't go up past where the logo is or it'll start copying that. So once you let go of the mouse, now you can pull from anywhere in this zone. But if I were to keep going, like let me pull from here and just start going up, see how it starts copying the logo? It's because there's still logo there to pull from. So you want to cover before you pull from anything. So let me pull from about here, and then I'm going to go up and start spraying. And you just want to make sure it looks like the bottle should look with no logo. When we zoom out, we'll be able to see better. I'm actually going to I'm going to turn flow up a bit, and I think I'm going to turn this off. This is to make it airbrushed. Airbrush tends to look blurry. You can see how there's texture here, and it looks a little blurry down here. So I'm going to see if it looks better now that I change that setting. Uh, it's going to be hard because I have to pull from right above this. Oh, you can see. Let me shrink this and pull again. You gotta do just a little at a time because I can see there's a line appearing already. So it's very hard until you get some space. Let me pull from like right here and then spray. Oh, that's not gonna work. It's very hard until you kind of get the hang of it. You mostly have to, it's gonna be different for each thing that you're painting. I just go until I start seeing a little edge of copy. Like I don't see any yet, so I'm going to actually stop there. Now I have more room to work with, so I'm just going to pull again and start again. Just go down a little bit, don't go too far. Now I have even more room to work with. So the more you go, the more you don't have to take a break and re-pull. You can just keep, spraying. I'm going to copy from about here and then start swinging left and right. Oh, I messed up. I see the shadows off. It's best if you start right in the middle, I think. Right about here, and then you start painting in the middle also. Yeah, it's a little bit better. There's still a little slightly off, but it's okay. So now all we gotta do is this last bit. I'm gonna start in the middle of this white band of like reflected light and start maybe here and start painting in the middle and get this side first. Oops, I can fix that in a minute. It's going to look patchy on the first go round, and then what you do is touch that patchiness up. So you can see there's an obvious band right here where things change. That's because I changed the settings right there. Ideally, I would just go all the way back and undo everything and start over. But we've got enough texture here, I can just quickly spray down and fix it. And also this part that I messed up on, I can fix real quick, just like that. So it's not that big a deal if you have a few patchy areas. Okay, so we do need to go a little larger. I'm going to change opacity just slightly. I think this will, well, you want it to look sharp, so actually leave that at 100, but change flow to about 65-ish. And I'm going to go larger here because I want to pull all the texture that I can. I'm going to start kind of high and then just get it to spray down the banded area that's kind of white or lighter gray. Let me get some more right here. Oh, I just messed up. You can just undo. Make sure you don't click more than once because it's easier to undo. I mean, you can undo multiple times, but it's just better if you only have one step to undo. There's still some weirdness going on right here. It's a little too dark. So I'm going to pull one at a time and then kind of move. Yeah, it looks a little better. It's still kind of weird. With things like this cup, it's often hard to get it exactly how you want, but you just toy with it, you zoom out and take a peek, and if it looks okay, then you're good, but if not, you just keep trying. So that side's alright. We gotta fix this side, and then we gotta fix the middle, but I'm gonna start with this side. Anything that's kind of blurry and needs texture, I'm gonna add texture or pull from this texture and put it there. It's alright. Oops. Okay, let's pull from the middle. Try to make that look similar enough. Okay, let's zoom out. So it's not perfect. I see dark areas here and there, but the other side looks alright. So I might actually pull from that side. You got to be careful though, because even though to the eye these look the same, they'll be different. And when you start pasting over here, you may see it's brighter on that side. So let's try getting these taken care of. You want it to just kind of look natural, and that's the hardest thing to make it look like is natural. Okay, that's a little better. And once you have logos over it, it's not going to be as noticeable. We're also about to tweak the color. So let's do the color correction first, and then we'll see what the logos look like over it. So now that you've finished that, I would actually go ahead and save each step of the way, by the way, so you don't lose anything. So we have the template ready now. We're just going to color correct and add the logos. First, we're going to correct lighting. Actually, scratch that. Hit Control U. We want to get the color right before we get the lighting right. And in this case, usually the metal will have a little yellow tint from the light it was the picture was taken under. And I think these two are actually different. This looks like more of a blue metallic tint, and this has a little yellow. So we're gonna probably have to tweak them separately, but if we Sometimes the best thing to do actually is to take saturation out, uh, which makes it more like a black and white chrome essentially. I'll leave a little bit of color in there, but I think the yellow did remove quite a bit from there. So let's try changing the lighting now. You hit Control L to bring up the levels, and that's for light. That will let us, you can see, now because these shadows are so splotchy, I think I will remove quite a bit by making it darker. But you don't want to remove them all because that looks fake. It looks too cartoonish. So you want to bring a little bit back. Like you take it dark, but then add, because they need to see these ridges down here too, at the bottom of the cup. And with it gone, you don't really see them. So put it right in the middle. I'm actually going to do right about there. And then take the highlight, or basically this is the highlights, the bright areas. You can pull this right up to the edge of where the white right here starts. Let me see if I go further. Yeah, it starts messing with the metal reflection if you go too far. And it's almost like things are too light. I would just pull it near the beginning of that white on the graph. And now this handles the grays or the midtones. So depending on which way you swing it, it's going to change that. You don't want to tweak this one too much because it can really change things unnaturally. But I think if I go down to 0.92 and then pull this back up, back to the left a little bit so it's brighter, that helps. Let me tweak this. You do have to kind of keep sliding all of them around till it feels right, but generally the rule of thumb is the light highlights should start where they start on the graph or where the peak starts, so somewhere around. It would normally it'd be here or here, but I think here is fine this time. And on this one where the dark starts, obviously the peak is above the graph, it's so high up. So somewhere in this range is fine. You just have to tweak it till it looks okay, and every screen's different too, so while it may look great on mine, who knows, it could be different on your screen. So I would err on leaving it brighter rather than darker, so I'm actually pulling back on some of the darkness, because if it's too dark on every screen, it won't work for anyone. And I'm gonna lighten to there. Let me test this again. I feel like it does look better, a little darker, but we need to show the ridges at the bottom, so there needs to be some highlighting. So I will pull to about there. I think that'll do. If we need to change it later, like it doesn't match our other products as good, then we can always come back to this template and use the levels to tweak it later. That's another benefit to having everything in a template that we can edit. So everything looks about right. Let's turn the logos on. Hang on a second. I accidentally have a overlay up here. There we go. That's a graphics card thing. I don't know if it was showing up on the recording, but it's on my screen. There's the logos. Let's position them about where they would be, because these are basically going to be the template logos that we override with new logos when we make a mock-up. So we've got the vertical, or we call it horizontal, but it actually goes vertical up the cup. So we got that. That's about centered. Because I haven't seen how they're going to do it, I don't know how the positioning will be, but I can see there's a ridge right here. So obviously it's not going to be below that point, so I'm going to move it up a bit. Something like that is about right. So we got that layer done, and then we've got the horizontal layer. If you didn't have a file and you pulled these from, like I did, you would just go find logos that you can use as a template logo. It really doesn't matter what the logo is as long as it shows how it, like this one shows that it's a rotary logo with, you want a good one that shows both the school mascot and the name, just so you can kind of use that as a mock-up. That looks close to centered. You can also use grids, but I find that every logo is so different that we put on here. You can just tweak them at each time you put one on. Because this may be center, but we'll throw another one on and it'll look off center. So as long as it's close for the template, it doesn't really matter. We're going to fix each one individually. So that's about right. So now we're good to go. This is basically a finished template. We're able to turn these layers on and off and link other logos in. And we're also able to turn off the background so it's transparent. If you were going to put this on a brochure, you would turn everything off as far as logos and background and just have the cup. You would save this Photoshop file basically as a blank for this cup name, like the item number or code, and you would drag that file into InDesign onto a layout. And because it's a Photoshop file, that's basically, it's going to make it like a smart object in the flyer or brochure of the cup. And you'll be able to then pull in logos, layering them over the top in the software for the brochure, which is InDesign. So you would want to save this blank as a Photoshop file if you're putting it inside a brochure. I usually save blanks of all of our stuff in one of the template folders. I think it's called blank Tumblr templates or something like that. That is where these blank Photoshop files are, but not all of them are in there because we haven't needed to use all of them yet. Uh, Over time, we probably will, and that's where they'll be. So I'll actually go ahead and save a blank of this. Well, actually, I don't know the item number yet. So until we know that, I can't. But once I know the item number for this cup or tumbler, I will put it in there so that you wouldn't have to save a new Photoshop blank every time. But just for future, like if you're making a new one like this, you would want to save a blank one in. I'll show you the folder real quick. Uh, Hang on. There is the templates, square templates. Blank Tom JPEGs is actually what it's called. I should call it blank tumblers for brochures. That way everyone knows what they're for. It'll have Photoshop files and JPEGs. The JPEGs are so that you can link over. If you already have an item in a brochure, you don't need to drag in the Photoshop file. You just need to relink and then select one of these that'll override that Photoshop link. It's basically faster than having to drag a new one in, and it allows you to not move the item. That's the whole point of relinking. So that's why we have all the TUM20s, as JPEGs in here. It's so that I can just relink them. But in some cases, you will have to drag the Photoshop in. That's why some have it and some don't. But anyways, this is the folder it'll be saved in for the blanks that you need to use in brochures. If you don't see one in here, you can just use the template file, save a blank from that, and use that blank. So that's how I've been doing it. It'll save us a little time if they're already in here. You won't have to open it and save it. It'll just be draggable then. So that's what this folder's for. But anyways, we've got everything we need. We've got these. So everything looks good. I'll go ahead and save. Now the assignment in this case was, let me open it. It was to make a layout with these logos, the B letter and wording, I guess that wording. This right here, yeah. So that'll basically be this horizontal style. It'll have the B and then the text below it. So I'm about to go make that, but since you already know that part of this, you don't need to see that in the video. But yeah, so that's basically it. Every time you get a new tumbler image, your goal is to use the pen tool to trace around it. Then that becomes a path, what you're drawing. And so you open the paths by going to Window, Paths. And the one you drew will be right here. So when you select that, you can't quite see it, but there's a blue line here and here. That's the path. So once you select it using the path window, you click this dotted circle and it becomes a selection. Then you hit Control Alt R and that brings up the layer masking options, which you will tweak the radius, a little bit of smoothing, contrast, and shift edge until you get it looking good enough. You sometimes don't even have to do any of that. You can just leave it by default. And then you just make sure that it's not, and you don't click invert. I was just checking something. So you just leave it as is. You'll hit OK, and as soon as you come out, you'll have that same layer selected. You'll click this mask button. It says add layer mask. And so the settings you just made would then be applied to that tumbler layer that you selected and drew around and everything. So that's it. Once you do that, you'll have the tumbler by itself over the white background, and you just add the logo layers, and that then you save that, and that's a template. The longest part is drawing around the tumbler to remove the background. And the reason you use the pen tool and do it this way is it's so much cleaner and professional looking. If you were to try to hand mask using like the brush tool, it would come out basically like this. Like you would have little parts missing. You know what I mean? Like you could try to shrink down and hand draw, but it's going to leave like weird, you know, if you were trying to erase around this, you're doing it by hand, and the pen tool allows you to change and perfect the line work. So you can see all those indentations up there are actually captured. Whereas if you were hand drawing, this would look terrible. It just wouldn't, the airbrushing just doesn't come out right. So same thing for using the eraser tool. Plus the eraser is permanent. The mask wasn't permanent until I made sure it was good. Then I made it permanent. Um, I'm gonna delete this mask there. So now there is no mask, but the point of doing it the long way with the pen tool and the masking is that you can make sure it's perfect. You can also edit it later or undo it. And then if you are satisfied and you never need that background again, then you can click here and apply mask. And now we permanently applied it, so now the cup's free with no background. But that's the reason for this longer way of doing it. So that's basically it. If you need any more information, we can just put it in another video or email me and ask about it.